They were planning my future like I was already gone. I'd just gotten off the phone with Melissa, my daughter. She'd called from the airport. Sweet, concerned, full of, "We love you, Dad," and "You should really consider that assisted living place." But she forgot to hang up. And what I heard next felt like being pushed off a cliff. "Jason, let's just move fast. He's not going to argue. The house is worth close to $1 million. We could close by next week." And then she laughed. Not cruelly, just casually, like I was a line item on a spreadsheet. I sat there in the quiet, listening to the sound of my life being negotiated behind my back. That's when I knew. They wanted to erase me quietly. So I left a louder message, one in the form of a sold sign on the lawn and a letter on the door. The house they were counting on? Gone. The man they thought was weak? Very much awake. I wasn't always this invisible. There was a time people saw me, respected me, even needed me. I worked 42 years at the Ford engine plant, mostly night shifts. I was a maintenance man, kept the whole line running. There were nights the place would have shut down if I hadn't been there with my toolbox and a flashlight. People used to say I could fix anything but a broken heart. I used to smile when they said that. Back then, I believed it. My wife, Marlene, was my whole world. We bought this house in '84, just a 2-bedroom in the southeast corner of Ann Arbor. I remodeled it room by room with my own hands, ripped up the shag carpet, rewired the kitchen, even built the front porch swing where we'd sit on summer nights sipping iced tea and counting fireflies. Melissa was born a year after we moved in, our only child. She had Marlene's green eyes and her stubborn streak. That kid could light up a room just by walking in. Everything I did, every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, it was all to give her more than what we had growing up. College? We made sure she had it paid for in full. Marlene took on weekend shifts at the bakery just so Melissa wouldn't graduate in debt. I still remember the look on her face when we dropped her off at Michigan State. Excited, terrified, hopeful. She hugged us so tight I thought my ribs might crack. Said we were the best parents in the world. Funny how people forget the promises they make when they're 18. Marlene passed 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Quick and cruel. 1 minute she was baking her famous lemon squares. The next we were sitting in a doctor's office, hearing words like inoperable and months, not years. She spent her last days in our bedroom, looking out the bay window I'd installed just for her. She said the light hit the maple trees just right in the fall. After the funeral, the house felt like a tomb. Too quiet. Too big. Melissa came by more often at first, bringing takeout, checking on me, making sure I ate something other than toast. I appreciated it. I really did. But after a while, the visits thinned out. Phone calls replaced dinners. Then texts replaced phone calls. Then came Jason, her husband, real estate guy, smooth talker, always looking at everything like a deal waiting to happen. I let them move in for a few months after his brokerage folded. "Just until we get back on our feet, Dad," she said. I didn't charge them rent. Wouldn't dream of it. They were family. That was 2 years ago. They never moved out. They just took over, started rearranging furniture, changing curtains, replacing my coffee pot with one of those expensive machines I didn't know how to work. Jason put his name on the Wi-Fi account. Melissa took over the grocery list. She even started organizing the garage where I kept my tools. "You've done enough, Dad," she'd say when I protested. "Let us take care of things now." At first, I thought it was love, concern, the natural course of aging. But slowly, I started to realize I wasn't being cared for. I was being managed. They began making little comments. Maybe it's time to downsize. Wouldn't you be happier around people your own age? You really shouldn't be going up and down the basement stairs. One day, I walked into the living room and they were sitting together on the couch, laptop open, browsing listings for senior living communities. Jason clicked through photos of smiling retirees playing bingo and shuffleboard while Melissa made notes. "I'm still standing right here," I said, but they didn't even flinch. That's when I knew. They weren't helping me. They were soft-launching my disappearance. And the worst part? I'd let it happen. Every decision I'd made in the last 40 years was for them. And now, they were deciding what to do with what was left of me. It was a Saturday morning when the call came. The leaves outside had just started turning, that golden orange that made the whole street look like it belonged on a postcard. Marlene used to love autumn, said it made everything feel honest, nothing left to hide. I was finishing up my toast and black coffee when Melissa's name lit up the caller ID. I hadn't heard from her in 3 days, which wasn't unusual lately. Jason said they were away on a working getaway, some kind of real estate seminar up in Traverse City. Probably more wine tasting than work, if I had to guess. I answered on the 3rd ring. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound chipper. "Hey, Dad." Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. Like the kind of voice people use when they're about to sell you something. "How's the trip?" I asked. "Oh, gorgeous. The lake is crystal clear. Jason's loving it up here. You'd really like this place, Dad. Peaceful. Clean air. Great views." "I'm sure I would," I said, sipping my lukewarm coffee. There was a pause, just long enough for me to feel the shift coming. "So, we've been thinking," she said. And there it was, the line that always came before something unpleasant. "I'm listening." "Well, Jason and I toured this really lovely senior living community up here, not one of those sad, sterile places. This one's different. It's more like a resort. Independent apartments, on-site dining, yoga classes, even art therapy. They have nurses on staff, just in case. But it's not a hospital, I promise." "Uh-huh," I said. "We actually talked to the intake director. They have a unit available. Move-in ready." Now she was speaking fast, filling the silence before I could object. "We thought it could be our gift to you. A way for you to finally relax. You've worked so hard your whole life, Dad. You deserve to be taken care of." I looked around my kitchen. The oak cabinets I built myself. The worn linoleum under my feet. The humming of the fridge that Marlene used to tape our grandkids' artwork to. I knew what she really meant. You deserve to disappear quietly. "I see," I said, keeping my voice steady. Jason's voice chimed in from the background speaker. "We're covering the deposit, Walter. This place is top tier. We wouldn't offer if we didn't think it was best." "Best for whom?" I wanted to ask. "Best for me, or for the equity you'd free up once I was out of the picture?" "And when would this gift begin?" I asked. Melissa laughed lightly. "Well, we were thinking next week. That way you have time to pack just your essentials. Don't worry about anything else. We'll handle the rest." My knuckles whitened around the coffee mug. "The rest?" I echoed. "You know, paperwork, address change, utilities. Jason's already spoken with someone who can help list the house. This neighborhood's in high demand right now. You'd be surprised what it could go for." So there it was, the final piece. They weren't just trying to help me transition. They were already preparing the sale, probably had a flyer mock-up ready. I looked at the photograph of Marlene still sitting on the windowsill. Her smile looked smaller today. Or maybe it was just the light. Melissa kept talking. "We just want what's best, Dad. We're doing this out of love. Out of love. If this was love, I'd hate to see what convenience looked like. I took a deep breath. Well, that's very generous of you both, I said, my tone warm. I'll have to think it over. There was a pause on her end, maybe surprised I wasn't resisting. Of course, she said quickly. Take your time, but we do need to let them know by Monday. Understood, I said. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, sweetheart. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Mel. The call ended. The silence that followed felt heavier than any noise. I placed the phone down gently, walked to the hallway, and stood in front of the old wooden coat rack I'd made out of reclaimed barnwood. My jacket hung there, along with the scarf Marlene used to wear on windy days. They thought they were managing me, that I'd go quietly, that the house, the memories, everything I'd built would soon be theirs to divide, redecorate, and flip. But I wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. If they wanted the house so badly, they were about to learn what happens when you assume an old man won't read the fine print. The next morning, I was out of bed before sunrise. My old bones creaked, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I made a list. Not on a computer, not in some fancy app, but on yellow-lined paper with a pencil I sharpened myself. That's how I've always done things. Slow, intentional, permanent. 1. Attorney. Property rights. 2. Realtor. Quiet. Fast sale. Then 3. Storage. Essentials only. 4. Locks. Change everything Marlene used to joke that my lists could outlive a tornado. Maybe they were finally going to outlive something worse. By 9 a.m., I was parked in front of the law office of Stanley & Ross, tucked between a shuttered diner and a used bookstore downtown. I'd used them once before, years ago, when Marlene and I wrote up our wills. Inside, everything still smelled like lemon wood polish and worn carpet. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" "Yes, ma'am," I said. "I'd like to speak to someone about selling my home." Quietly. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from Elaine Ross, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, and the kind of woman who didn't miss a comma. "So," she said, glancing over her bifocals, "tell me what's going on." I laid it out, gently, factually, about Melissa and Jason, about the call, about the house they assumed would be theirs before the leaves finished falling. She didn't flinch. "Mr. Briggs," she said, "do you hold the title to the house solely in your name?" "I do. Marlene passed 3 years ago. It transferred fully to me. Paid off 10 years prior." She nodded. "Then you have every legal right to do what you wish. And if you'd like to sell discreetly, I have a few contacts." I exhaled slowly. Not relief. Resolve. We spent the next 20 minutes reviewing documents, updating contact information, and outlining next steps. She recommended a realtor she trusted. "Doesn't talk unless it's to the right people," she said with a wink. That's how I ended up meeting Greg Vaughn, a man in his late 40s with quiet shoes and a firm handshake. We walked the property together while he jotted notes on a leather-bound pad. "You built this porch yourself?" he asked, admiring the trim work. "Every plank," I said. He whistled softly. "Houses like this, well-maintained, original owners in this part of town, they don't stay on the market long. Especially not if the seller's willing to accept a clean offer. I want it gone," I said. "Cash buyer, no fuss, and no signs on the lawn." Greg nodded, unfazed. "I know just the kind of buyer." Next was storage. I drove to Maple Ridge Self-Storage, signed a short-term lease on a small climate-controlled unit, and began sorting through 40 years of life. I kept the essentials. Marlene's jewelry box, our wedding album, the Afghan her mother had knitted, my old socket set, and the photo of Melissa at age 7, holding a fishing rod, grinning from ear to ear. The rest? I left. Furniture, curtains, dishes, memories frozen in wood and fabric. I'd packed up a life once before, after the funeral. I could do it again. 2 days later, I called LockSafe Security, told them I needed all 3 locks replaced before Friday. No questions asked, just cash and discretion. The locksmith arrived in a Navy van, all business. "Moving out?" he asked as he installed the new deadbolts. "Something like that," I said, just making sure only the right people have keys. By the end of the week, everything was in motion. Elaine had drawn up the paperwork. Greg had a buyer, an investment group looking for long-term rental properties. Full cash offer. Closing in 7 business days. When I saw the number on the page, $865,000, I felt nothing. No thrill, no sadness, just clarity. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. That night, I stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes and dust motes spinning in the afternoon light. The silence was thick, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I walked to the bay window Marlene used to love and looked out at the sidewalk where Melissa learned to ride her bike, where she skinned her knee and I carried her inside, blood on her socks, tears on my shoulder. And now she was ready to trade me for a granite countertop condo with a lake view. Well, she'd get the lake view, but she'd never see this house again. And when she came home, she'd find a note taped to the door. I taped the letter to the inside of the front door at exactly eye level. Not too low, not too high. I wanted it to meet their gaze the moment they stepped in, assuming they could. I used the same pen Marlene once gave me for our 20th anniversary, a smooth Parker fountain with blue-black ink. She said it made even hard words feel softer. I wasn't sure about that, but I knew one thing. What I wrote needed to cut clean, not deep. The house was empty now, mine for just a few more hours. My suitcase sat by the door. I'd packed only what mattered. Marlene's locket, our photo albums, my father's watch, and a pair of well-worn slippers she always teased me about. And the new keys? They were tucked safely in my pocket, the only ones that worked now. I stepped outside just before noon and locked the door behind me, the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place, sharp and final. The locksmith had done a good job. Melissa's old key would do nothing but turn in the wrong direction. Back at my new apartment, I opened the app. Live camera feed. Active. The hidden camera I'd placed in the hallway looked like a phone charger. It was angled perfectly to capture the entryway, the front door, and the small side table where I'd left the vase Marlene always loved. 4:13 p.m. Melissa's car pulled into the driveway. A black SUV leased under Jason's name. I recognized the ding on the bumper. They'd told me it came from a minor parking lot bump. I watched Melissa step out first, wearing a long beige coat and sunglasses she didn't need. Jason followed behind, pulling both their suitcases as if they were returning from vacation. Their expressions were casual, confident. Melissa even laughed about something Jason said. They approached the door. Melissa reached into her purse and pulled out the old house key. She inserted it and stopped. The key didn't turn. She frowned, jiggled it, tried again. Jason stepped up behind her, now visibly annoyed. "Try the back," she muttered. Jason disappeared around the side of the house. 3 minutes later, he returned. Locked. Garage, too. He changed the damn locks. That's when Melissa noticed the envelope. Her name and Jason's written in clean, deliberate script. She peeled it off the door with shaking hands, opened it, and read silently. Jason leaned in to read over her shoulder. I watched them freeze, then blink, then read it again. Melissa's mouth parted like she was about to speak, but no words came. Jason took the letter from her hands, read it again, then muttered something I couldn't hear. Probably a curse. Melissa sat down on the front step, just like she used to as a teenager, only this time there were no scraped knees or boyfriend drama, only the weight of a home she'd lost. Jason paced. He kept checking his phone. I could see the red flush rising in his neck, the same flush he got when Michigan State lost in the playoffs. But this was no game. "This is a mistake," Melissa finally said, though she didn't sound convinced. Jason shook his head. "It's done. He sold it. He never said a word." "No, he knew. He knew what we were doing." Her voice cracked. "He heard us." Jason didn't answer. He sat beside her, his hands clasped together, elbows on his knees. They stayed like that for a long time. Frozen. Powerless. Exactly how they'd hoped I'd be. I turned off the feed. That was enough. I didn't need to see more. Didn't need to hear them cry or argue or call lawyers they couldn't afford. The message had been delivered. Not with shouting, not with threats, just with facts. The house was gone. The locks were changed. And the old man they'd planned to push aside? He'd already walked away. That night, I slept for 8 full hours without waking once. First time that had happened since Marlene died. No creaking floorboards, no pacing the hallway, no imaginary conversations in my head, wondering if I was being ungrateful, or just finally honest. When I woke up, sunlight spilled across the small bedroom at my new apartment. The curtains were plain. The bed was too firm. But I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Light, like someone had lifted a weight from my chest while I slept. I brewed a pot of coffee, real coffee, not the pod machine Jason insisted on, and sat at my little kitchen table with the newspaper. I read every word, even the boring parts. I wasn't in a rush. No one was waiting to manage my day, or check if I'd taken my supplements, or hint again that maybe it's time to stop driving. It was just me. And honestly, that felt enough. Around 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then came the first text. "Dad. Please, can we talk? I don't understand why you did this. We were trying to help you." Then another. "You could have at least told us. You didn't have to blindside us like this." I stared at the screen. The dots blinked for a while. Melissa was typing, but then stopped. No new message came. I didn't respond. What was there to say? I'd given her everything. My time, my money, my home. I made myself small so she could build a bigger life. And when I finally needed space to breathe, she tried to hand me a brochure and call it a blessing. The truth is, I didn't feel angry. Not anymore. I'd already burned through all that. The betrayal, the grief, the nights spent staring at Marlene's photo, asking myself what I did wrong as a father. But now? I just felt done. Not in a bitter way. Not in a vengeful way. Just done with explaining myself to people who stopped listening years ago. I opened my banking app. The wire transfer had cleared. The balance looked surreal. More money than I'd ever seen in my life, and not a single cent of it would go to anyone who saw me as a transaction. I called the storage unit and scheduled the last few boxes to be delivered. My new place was simple, but I'd make it feel like home. I had Marlene's reading lamp, her favorite Afghan, the photo of us in Traverse City back when Melissa was still in pigtails. That was enough. Later that afternoon, I walked to the park 2 blocks over, sat on a bench with an old paperback mystery, and watched squirrels chase each other under the maple trees. A man with a cane nodded at me as he passed. Another gentleman waved from across the lawn. A woman in her 60s asked if I lived nearby. I told her yes, just moved in. She smiled. Takes guts to start over. I nodded. Takes forgetting what held you back. She laughed at that. So did I. That evening, I made dinner for one. Nothing fancy. Just scrambled eggs, toast, and a little jam. Marlene used to call that bachelor breakfast. I poured a glass of ginger ale into a wine glass because, why not? Some things still deserve ceremony. Before bed, I opened my drawer and pulled out the letter Melissa had sent last year for Father's Day. It was full of nice words. Best dad in the world. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for everything. I believed those words when I read them. I still think she meant them. Once. But somewhere along the way, she stopped saying them out loud. And I stopped being seen. Now, I don't need the words, or the gifts, or even the apology I know will never come. All I needed was one good night's sleep, a quiet morning, and a door that only opened for me. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't being forgotten. It's realizing who was forgetting you, and when. Looking back, I don't think Melissa meant to hurt me. Not at first. But love, when it goes unchecked, starts to turn into control. And control, when dressed up as care, can feel like kindness, even when it erases you. I spent most of my life giving. That's what fathers do, right? You give your back, your time, your hands. You build swing sets and pay tuition and patch the leaking roof before anyone notices. You show up. Quietly. Without keeping score. But one day, you wake up and realize they stopped counting too. And maybe the cruelest part isn't the betrayal. It's the assumption that you'll accept it, that you'll smile and nod while they sign you away, one signature at a time. That's what broke me. Not the plan to sell the house, not the brochure with pool tables and community game nights, but the fact that they believed I'd go along with it, like I was already halfway gone. But I wasn't. I'm still here. Maybe older, maybe slower, but not invisible, not disposable. I didn't leave that house out of spite. I left it because I finally understood something Marlene tried to teach me years ago. There's a difference between being strong and being silent. One of them sets boundaries. The other just fades away. I was done fading. So I set the boundary. I walked away before they boxed me up. And now? Now I wake up in a place no one decorated for me. No one approved it. No one picked the drapes. It's mine. And it may be small and it may be plain, but every corner of it whispers one simple truth. I'm not theirs to manage. I'm mine to reclaim.